From humble beginnings to the pinnacle of success, one man's journey proves that with determination, anything is possible. This is Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., inspiring conversations of triumph over adversity. Here's George.
Our guest today is a good friend, my good friend from way back, Coach Wade Houston. Wade's a former basketball player at University of Louisville. He was one of the first black basketball players to go to Louisville. He and a couple of other guys he'll tell us about. His remarkable coaching career includes a historic tenure as the first black head men's basketball coach in the Southeastern Conference history, paved the way for future generations. Beyond basketball, the basketball court, Wade and his wife Alice and family have forged a new path in the business world, building one of the largest black-owned transportation companies in the USA. Wade, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chance. Thank you so much. I appreciate being here with you. Always a pleasure.
Oh man, it's we spent so many years together that in here since I've been in Florida and you're moving around the country, we haven't had a chance to share as much as we used to, but I look forward to the day for us to relive some of the experiences in our relationship. But I want to start off. This podcast is based off of turning obstacles to opportunities. So we want to kind of walk through your life's journey and some of the obstacles that you faced. Not everything, but some of the obstacles that you faced that helped you become as successful as you are today, you and your family. So why don't you start off by telling us about Alcoa, one of my favorite little cities, Tennessee, and how it all started?
Yeah, I think it's a familiar journey with a lot of us back in the '60s, George, and you of course growing up in Louisville. I grew up a little further south than in Tennessee in Alcoa, but our stories are similar in that we had to fight through a lot of obstacles, overcome a lot of obstacles, and I just remember riding on the back of the buses, not being able to eat in the restaurants, and just wondering what was going to happen 10, 15, 20 years down the road, because I knew I didn't want to stay in that environment. So I figured out how to work through that through my dad, who worked at the Alcoa aluminum company. And many times he was the first one to be laid off, the last one to be hired back. So we became serial entrepreneurs, and he took me with him on this journey to feed the family. And we did landscaping, we did painting, we cut grass, we sold fish that he ordered from somewhere. I have no idea to this day how he got that fish brought in that he sold in the neighborhood. And that was back in the days when the roads weren't paved. It was like pebble, gravel roads, and he had this old wagon where we take this wagon up and down the street selling fish in this ice container. So I just learned how to be an entrepreneur from him, and he did it out of necessity. So a lot of us back during that time in the South in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s had to survive any way we could. And I think it made us grow. It made us become stronger men. It made us understand what the world was like, where we didn't want to go back to that world. And from that point on, I just kept moving forward. Got into basketball, of course, but I didn't want to stay in basketball. My goal was to always be an entrepreneur based on what I saw my dad do. I ventured into basketball, as you know, and that's how we became friends, how we met, how we used to play and travel together. So here we are today, still staying in touch with each other and just having a lot of love for each other, and just good to be on here talking to you.
Yeah, I never knew that your aspirations were to be an entrepreneur during the early days. I knew that the way you carried yourself, your character, how you handle situations that came about, you always cool, calm, and collected, and worked your way through it. That basketball was your first love, and I never knew that. So that's very interesting. As a high school player, it was you and your brother. He's a few years younger than you. Is that correct?
Right. And Tommy Woods, who played at East Tennessee. Tommy was the first black player at East Tennessee State University. my brother went on to Cincinnati. Then we had one guy went to Florida A&M, and one guy went to Kentucky State. So we had a really good high school team. It caught the attention of a lot of coaches. But basically, it was a team that came along every 10 years or so. Alcoa, because of the aluminum company, had a lot of good athletes who moved into the city. Great jobs there for families moving in. So we always were able to compete, even though we were a smaller school than, say, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Nashville. And as I think today about Asheville, North Carolina was a team that we always played every year going across the mountains. But because of the aluminum company there, which is one of the largest aluminum companies in the world, we had good athletes. And our team was comprised of guys who went on to major colleges. Like I said, my brother who went to Cincinnati, I went to Louisville, Tommy Woods went to East Tennessee, and another guy went to Florida A&M. So we were fortunate in that we had families that moved in and just kept us competitive, even though we were a smaller town.
Yeah. So Wade, you had another famous athlete that came along during that time with you also, correct?
Yeah, we had several. We had Lynn Swan, for example, grew up in Alcoa. Lynn Swan's family later on moved to California, where he went to Southern California. But Lynn's family was there. He was there. Randall Cobb, who played in the NFL, the Green Bay Packers, grew up. Randall Cobb's grandmother and I were good friends. Albert Davis from there, who went on to play with the Eagles. David Davis played with Green Bay. So we churned out a lot of good athletes, professional athletes for town size.
Yeah. That's amazing. Before we move a little further, I remember having conversations with your dad, and he would always have that very serious look on his face, but with a story, and it was a very deep story that you walked away thinking about what he actually meant and how it would prepare you for life. So I always enjoyed having that one-on-one conversation with him back in the day.
He was a special guy, and way before his time, Tim, because I thought he could have been a good politician had he come along earlier, because he could remember things about politics, who was running for different positions, and he talked about politics forever and forever. And one of the things that I really enjoyed in my lifetime was the fact that he and my high school coach, and I'm sure you remember this, had a chance to come up and watch us play in a state tournament.
Right.
That was something that he talked about forever and ever, was watching us play in a state tournament at Freedom Hall. He and my high school coach. And then I introduced him to Muhammad Ali, and that was probably the second thing that he remembers. And I got pictures of him and Muhammad Ali, and he was a huge boxing fan. So anytime Ali was fighting, he called me, and we just talked about the fight. I mean, he remembers Joe Louis. He remember all the guys, Jersey Joe Walcott. So He was just a special guy, just easy to talk to and full of so much information.
During those times, our parents, our seniors, that's what they really was the sport, boxing. And they listened to it on the radio, and together in groups and so forth. So they are, the basketball and all that hadn't hit the TV and so forth. But you guys would talk to you about the boxing all day long.
Well, he didn't get a chance to see me play in high school but just a few times, because he worked the graveyard shift.
Okay.
I worked at the Alcoa Aluminum Company, and so it was almost like anytime we had a game, he had to work. So he would get reports from us and from the family on how the games went.
Right.
But unfortunately, he didn't get a chance to see us play that much, because he'd go to work in the afternoon and get off like 11 o'clock at night. So so he didn't get a chance to see us play that much.
Yeah. So Mom had to keep an eye on that and give it a report, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
So Wade, you had a good team in high school. Tell me about the recruiting from some of the major schools that came after you and how you wound up at Louisville.
Well, my goal was to go to Tennessee State. That was a school that I really liked. A lot of my high school friends went to Tennessee State. The coaches from Tennessee State recruited me heavily. Knoxville College was another historically black college close to us. So the HBCUs were the schools that I was looking at, because you have to remember that the University of Tennessee had not integrated any of its sports teams at that time.
Right.
And once a year, we were allowed to go over to Neyland Stadium at the University of Tennessee, and they had one game usually against a very, very weak opponent, and they would block out about 50 tickets up in the top of the end zone that we could go, and he said the colored section only. So I had no aspirations and no thoughts about going to the University of Tennessee or schools in the South, because it wasn't until 1965 that Perry Wallace, who went to Vanderbilt, was one who had a lot of success at Vanderbilt, who went on to become a lawyer. So through the schools throughout the South, we just didn't think about that much. Tommy Woods was the same way, who went on to East Tennessee. But I just felt that going to Tennessee State would have been the best place for me until a guy who ran our post office in Alcoa in Maryville called Coach Hickman, who was the head coach at the University of Louisville, and said, "You need to send somebody down here to see this Hall High was our high school name." He said, "You need to send somebody down here to Hall High in Alcoa and watch this team play." And as it turned out, another guy came down, but he couldn't get in because we had a small gym, and our games are sold out. So the guy called back and told Coach Hickman, he said, "I couldn't get in to see him play because I couldn't get in. The place was sold out." So eventually they came over, and Coach Hickman sent Coach Drummond down there to see us play. And once Coach Drummond saw us play, he saw Tommy, he saw myself, he saw my brother C.A. with the three main players on the team. And then they invited us up for a visit to visit the University of Louisville. And that's when I really got interested. And that's when I knew I had a chance to go outside of Tennessee State and other schools. And that's what happened from that point.
Okay. So you chose University of Louisville, and who were the other two black players that came in with you that year?
Eddie Whitehead was from Cincinnati, and Sam Smith, who you know very well, was from Hazard, Kentucky. And we, at that time, freshmen, of course, couldn't play varsity. And I think our freshman team at that time, we were like 20-2 on the freshman team. And as we molded and got together, as the three of us, people were pretty excited about watching us come up to the varsity team. So when we came up to the varsity team that second year, Sam was the one who stood out, I'd say, probably the most. And Sam actually started as a sophomore in some games, but then we progressed pretty good. And we would, it's funny because we'd have to fight for playing time. It was like it was a competition between me and Sam and Eddie. And I guess it made us better because we had to fight every day in practice just to get some time on the court. But Sam ended up getting more time. But then as we got older on that team, we started to get better, have better teams. And it actually was a lot of fun for us, the three of us playing together.
Yeah. So during that time, there were blacks on the football team, though, right?
Right. Yeah, we had Lenny Lyles, who was probably the most well-known guy on that team. And Lenny, of course, went to Louisville Central. And we had Lee Callan, who was from Louisville. We had Larry Broughton. We had about 5 guys on the football team, and they paved the way for us. They really did. I mean, they took us places, told us places to stay away from, to be careful if you went here, went there. And we pretty much stood on their shoulders. And Lenny got there, I think, in maybe 55. So Lenny had been there like 7 years before I got there. So they had a lot of black players there. Had some gentlemen in the city, businessmen. Hankins with the Mammoth Life Insurance Company had a guy with Philip Morris. Dr. Parrish, who was a professor on campus, he came there after they closed Municipal College. Municipal College, of course, had all the black students before they closed, and then those students came over to the University of Louisville. So, but the football players are great. I mean, they just took us under their wing, showed us around, and again, like I said, we just stood on their shoulders, and it would have been hard for us without those guys.
Well, this was during a time that, from a basketball perspective, the color barrier hadn't really been broken as much as it was in football, for whatever particular reason. But after your freshman class moved through, who came behind you? Was there any other black athletes before Wes?
No, Wes was 2 years behind me. Dave Gilbert came in the year after we were there. So we had Dave Gilbert that came in. When I was a sophomore, Dave was a freshman. And then after Dave came in, Wes came in, and then Butch came in the following year. So they laid the foundation of the program. You know, we started it, but still watching Wes play in a state tournament at Seneca High School and watch Butch play at Hardin County, Breckenridge. We just saw how good these guys were. Clem Haskins, of course, went on to Western Kentucky. Dwight Smith, Greg Smith. George Tinsley. So you guys really came on, and we thought we were pretty good until we saw you guys play, and then and Wes was special. I mean, the first time I saw him play, I mean, he was like a man among boys, and of course, you know, Butch and your class, and you guys. So, but we started it, but by the same token, we weren't at the same level that you guys were. You guys came in. It's almost like you guys just took what you saw and just took it to a whole different level, and we just enjoyed watching you guys play.
Well, seriously, Wade, I think the standards that you guys set at University of Louisville, because you all were the first athletes going to a major school that I remember, because certainly there wasn't anybody else around the area. Excuse me, we had great high school ball players, but as you know, even better than I do, each year guys get better and better because they see guys before them doing things, and it opens up the door in their mind that they can do this, you know. And so you going to University of Louisville and Sam and so forth, it at least let us know that there was an opportunity. Of course, University of Louisville and some of the other schools, I think 3 guys coming in your class, but in some of the succeeding classes, they were only bringing in two guys at a time, if I remember correctly. I know that's what they were trying to do at University of Kentucky as they recruited Wes. They wanted Dallas to go with him to try to get him to go to UK. But he and Butch came in, I think, at the same time.
No, you're right. You're right, and it's, I think the theory was to have at least two black players to be roommates on campus, to be roommates on the road. And so there was a method to that madness, you know. So,
Yep.
so the two they were trying to bring in, and with us it was 3, and our room was Sam, and then Eddie Whitehead, who was the other black player that came in, roomed with the football player. He roomed with Charlie Johnson, who was a football player.
Okay.
So we had an odd number, but they worked it out where Eddie had a roommate in Charlie Johnson.
Right. That's a good roommate, Charlie Johnson. Yeah. So where'd you go on through at University of Louisville? And you have a great career there. And so the next step, but of course, that's where you met a young lady there at University of Louisville. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, Alice, who I'm still married to be 54 years in December. 54 glorious years, wonderful years. And
there you go.
but Alice was 2 years behind me. She was a cheerleader at Central High School. And when we came in as freshmen, we really didn't have anything to do once basketball season ended. Actually, during basketball season, we play basketball, we go back to the dorm, we study. But the one thing we did was that we go to Central and watch the Central High School basketball games, and really, really good basketball games. But Alice was a cheerleader, and she caught my attention, I guess, the first time I saw her as a cheerleader, because she was doing all of these flips and twirls. And I told Sam and Eddie, I said, she's pretty athletic. I said, I like her athletic ability. I said, and they said, but how about the way she looked? I said, well, I like that too. So
I'm glad this is being recorded.
Yeah. So anyway, Alice and I dated for a while off and on. And of course, she went away to school to Baldwin Wallace in Cleveland, Ohio. And then when I was at U of L, we worked in a summer program my senior year, an upward bound program. And that's when we started dating seriously. And that was 66, my senior year. And then 69, we got married. And not only was it a good union in terms of just the family, We had the same aspirations for business and doing things in the community, giving back to the community. So it just made the marriage much stronger because we had so many things that we enjoyed. We loved sports. We went to games, traveled together, and so much of it was centered around sports that it made it much easier for us to survive and make our marriage grow.
Yeah. Of course, Al is coming from a great athletic coaching and players background that excuse me, that was ingrained in her whole body. And as you indicated, being a cheerleader at Central, I remember when I played at Mayo, Alice was a year ahead of me at Central. I remember seeing her myself, but that they had that one particular cheer where it was easy, you know. that was really really something. They had great team and also great cheerleading staff. So
that cheer was famous all over. Everybody,
oh, yeah.
it was famous.
Yeah, the bumblebee's gonna sting you, you know. So here's you go on from University of Louisville basketball. So what was your next step? And you graduated. What was your degree?
My degree was in education. So I got
okay.
So I got my master's in education and my undergrad in education.
Okay.
But again, I was unsure as to what I wanted to do when I graduated. And I had some opportunities in the business world, which is kind of what I set out to do from a youngster. But then I started playing like AAU basketball at that time with, we eventually played together with a lot of the guys from the city, from Bellarmine, from the University of Kentucky. And I got into the coaching mood and to continuing to play. So I put off the business world while I started coaching, and it really turned out well because outside of going to Europe, I went to Europe, played in France. Outside of that, I just stayed in the coaching world, and opportunities started to come. I coached at Aaron's High School, and we had some really good guys I found in walking the hallways, guys who were in technical and vocational.
Yep.
Their classes at Aaron. I just stand out by my front door of my classroom and just watch guys walk by, and I see these 6'6", 6'7" guys walk by who never played basketball except for rec league, and I got excited because I was pulling them in. Keith Humphrey, Don Miller, and guys who went on to play in college, Anthony Hall. So then I got really involved in it, had success at Aaron's, and we beat one really good male team of Wesley Cox, Stanley Bunton, and
oh boy.
Bentley and those guys who were just a heck of a basketball team. And then when the coach at Male High had some issues there, the job came up, and that's when I was offered a chance to go at Male. And then that's when you and I joined together and put together 3 years of fantastic high school basketball, but it just grew on me. As I said before, I'm not sure that was what I wanted to do, but as we had success and I got to meet so many good people and teachers and guys like Willie Lee Carter, who was just a guy who kept us all together. And so when you meet those kind of people and you have that kind of leadership, I mean, how did you not want to be around that?
Yeah, that Wade, as you left Aaron's and as you said, you came to Mayo. I was already there doing just teaching and coaching track, and the job came open, and of course I interviewed as well. But once I heard your name was mentioned, I knew of your experience, and I told the principal, if I get a chance to work with Wade Houston, I'd love to do this, and that was the best thing that happened for me those next 3 years. And I mean, we could talk for hours on the stories that from the standpoint of practice and traveling basketball and so forth, that it was just, and we brought in all the other coaches, the football coaches, everybody wanted to be a part of our little group, But as you moved into Mayo, and we had Daryl Griffith, Bobby Turner, and Jeff Mack in particular coming in, and there was already a group there. How did you kind of look at the program at that time?
Well, I was so excited because I saw those guys play in junior high school. You know, I saw Jeff play at Warner. I saw Grip play at Duval, and I'll never forget watching him the first time um, dunking the basketball in the 7th grade. I was standing up at Male High School where they used to have the games on Saturday morning. They bring in all these middle school teams on Saturday morning, and you could watch the middle school guys play. And the big schools like Mel and Central and Shawnee, Manual, and I was coaching at Aaron's at the time. But the big schools, like I mentioned, had almost the first pick.
Yeah.
And Mel had a way of just getting in so early on those guys, and they would go in and sort of scoop up the top players. Well, Mel is Central, like I said, Manuel, Shawnee. So, but at Aaron's, I'm just watching. I said, you know, I got no chance to get these guys. I said, I got to go in and just keep grabbing the guys out of the hallway at
Right.
Aaron's and then make my teams from there. But when the job opened up and I had a chance to apply for the job, now all of a sudden I go to having a chance to get all the top players. And so when that happened, it was just such a kind of unexpected, but just a joy and a pleasure to have a chance to coach those guys. And then, as you said too, Ted, I think it's worth mentioning how you put a staff together, how a staff comes together, and a staff that get excuse me, a staff that gets along so well. So that doesn't always happen. So you know, you never know what kind of a loyalty, you know, what kind of position that people are looking for. But we had the thing about us is that our staff was so cohesive and we were so strong. The leadership was so strong, and that's what made us have so much success in those 3 years we worked there together.
Yeah, yeah. We had great talent, coach, as you mentioned, but that chemistry that we had, starting off with you and I, and moving on, moving on down to the players, because the guys that had been there before, they wanted to play. But I think after a while, they recognized that the talent, that this young talent coming in was going to make it tough for them. You did a great job of making sure we could get them in, you know, involved in the games and practice, and they saw, you know, who the talented players were, and then we started having, like you mentioned, Willie Lee Carter, who was a trainer / hall monitor / mentor and so forth, kind of came into the fold, and Garnet Phelps, who was the head football coach, he got involved. It all kind of pulled in together, and even the community, you know, the Male High community and just community in general, and your group started following us, and you know, there was no complaints. I mean, nobody could complain about anything going on, and so speak to that, because I think, Wade, in everywhere that you've been able to, through your, I think the way you approach your life, the way you approach friends, the way you lead, has always caused people to want to be a part of and support. Tell me a little bit about what you think makes that happen within you.
Yeah, I think it starts from within too, within our staff, within the players. And with me, it was like the 2 hours we spent in practice, the 34 minutes we spent on the court was just a part of what I enjoyed, and a part of what we did that was really good. So when we left the court, when we left practice, we look forward to having as much fun, because we had such good players and such hard workers, and when I say hard workers on the court, you know, we had a starting team, but then you had guys like Braxton and Sweet Jones and Yarbrough and all those guys who just made it. They made our top players better. They made us better as coaches, because there was nobody, no other team that had the next 5 players that worked as hard and was tough as those guys. So Daryl and Bobby and Jeff and Kevin and all of those guys who were the starters became better players because of who they had to play against every day in practice. And I remember when we won the state tournament in 1975. We played against Elizabethtown, and we had one of our great defensive games. I mean, I think we won like 70-something to 40 or 70-something to 50. And the next day in the paper, this lady from E-Town wrote a note to the editorial section, said they should outlaw that male basketball team from playing. Said they just mauled our little team from E-Town. At first I got upset. I said, why would she want to? Then I started to say, this is a compliment to us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But no, I mean, but the community was so important, and it really it showed that when these guys represented us, when they left Male High School, they went out in the community. They were always good people. They did good things, and they went on and had successful careers. So I'm just happy that we could pull them together. And the principal, Jay Levine, had his ways about doing things. He had his ways, and then Long Green, our principal, always had our back. I mean, anytime we needed anything, no matter what challenge we faced, he was always there. The assistant principals, Mr. Patterson, and all of them, the assistant principals, teachers came to the games. So when you got that kind of support system, it just makes everything flow. And when I saw that, I said, all we got to do is just don't mess this thing up, because we were leaders, for example, we would take Kevin and Wallace and play after practice. We leave practice and they grab us. No, come on, y'all got to play us 2-on-2. So I remember those days just playing. We called it Red and Wallace after practice. And they couldn't, if we were still playing AAU basketball, still in good shape. But I think they just enjoyed being around us as well as some of the other players.
They do, and as old as they are today, whenever I run into them, they still talk about it and say, "Hey, you and Coach Houston, we want to play 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 again." Oh, you're exactly right, Wade. That on the court and off the court, in the classroom, in the hallways, and so forth, it was an ongoing relationship with those particular players, and as well as the other student body, and we got the nicknames of Coach Mister and all the different things that everybody wanted to be a part of it. So that was a really great time, and 24/7 as far as just loving what we were doing. Like
you said, when you got guys like Gordon and you got the track coaches, Newton and those guys, and it was like one big family. So, in a lot of places, football had their cylinder that they stayed in. Basketball had their cylinder. The administration had to fight for the money and whatever. But we never had to challenge anybody for the amount of money. We could raise money. But the football, especially Garnett, because Garnett was like another basketball coach. He keep the books. He and Irv Sellers, who was a detective, who would just make sure that none of the other coaches would come up with major complaints.
Right.
So, but between the whole staff, as I said before, everything just fit together, and that's what made it so good for us.
Right. Wade, you mentioned that second team. I think that second team was such defense orientated that when most teams, when they would go to the bench, there was a big drop off. For us, when we went to that bench, that second group went in. They were all about defense, and they would actually just pour it on while Daryl, Bobby, and those guys had a chance to get a little rest. To come back in, because they were determined to make their name also.
Yeah, they had a I want to say a niche, but we had no drop off, and they took pride. When you take pride in something like they did, they didn't. If the team, we use a lot of full court pressure, and I can remember when we played that in Kingsport, Tennessee, and it was a huge game to me because I go back home with my high school team. And Kingsport, of course, was close to Knoxville and Alcoa. And Kingsport had a coach named Buck Van Huss, who had been there for I don't know, 30, 35 years, and he was a legend in that area. And so they had us down. You might remember, George, going into like the fourth quarter, they had us down like 12, 13 points. And I bring in Sweet, Braxton, and Vic, and I don't know who the other two players were. And in like 4 minutes after they came in that game in the fourth quarter, we were up by 8 and just went away and win that game. But without not having those guys who just love that defense and that desire to play defense, we would have lost that game. I'd have been so embarrassed going back home, taking my team. So that was the one game I wanted to win so badly was that game down in Kingsport, because I'm bringing my guys back home. And they wrote that game up like it was a huge, like it was a college game. And of course, they wanted to see Bobby and Daryl and the whole team and Jeff, and they put on the show like they did in Houston. Remember, Dr. Pepper Classic when the referees came up and told us that we're going to stay back in the locker room, and we want to see your guys dunk because we heard so much about how these guys dunk. And Joe and you and I said, well, this might be a setup. So they said, no, we're going to stay back in the locker room. So doing warm-ups, they had the door cracked about this far where they could peep out and see the guys. One was down there, one was up here. And I mean, our guys put on the show. I mean, they did some dunks that I hadn't seen before. Guys were throwing hats out on the floor. They were running out on the floor when they saw those dunks. But people like that, just like it was in Knoxville and in Kingsport, they wanted to see those guys put on the show, and they did.
You know, we could have very easily, those 3 years, if you take busing out of it, could have very easily won the state championship 3 years in a row with that group of young men that we had there, at Mayo, led by Bobby and Daryl and Jeff Mack in particular. It was a great run. But along came busing in Daryl and Bobby's senior year, and kind of our talent started spreading around the city. I got moved to Southern High School. You know, it's kind of slowed our program down a little bit, and I think we all kind of in the back of our mind kind of saw it coming to an end and started thinking about the next step. When you got to that particular point, had you decided what you were going to do next, or were you kind of thinking about that?
Well, you know, I sort of saw the handwriting on the wall because, and it wasn't that I was against desegregation because, you know, things are progressing, things are moving. All the studies show that these kids should perform well when they were bused to their different locations. And I don't know that you could argue with that, but I also feel that at Male High School, those students really loved what we were trying to do. I mean, there was so much caring, there was so much mentoring that went on at those schools. And I'm sure the same thing was going on at Central and Shawnee and some of the other schools. But, you know, again, by the same token, that wasn't to be. So we were dealt a hand that was a tough hand, but, you know, we played it the best we could. So, but again, I could just see the handwriting on the wall and just talking to a lot of college coaches coming in and a lot of people wanting to know what we were going to do. And as I ended up at the University of Louisville, then that starts another chapter in our life. And but we could see the handwriting on the wall. We pretty much knew what was coming after that.
Right. Yeah. I personally had just gotten married and thinking in terms of a family and I don't know what you were making, but I was only making about $5,600 for the school year and trying to make ends meet and so forth. So I think both of us at one time had an offer from the FBI. I talk about it a lot. It came out of the blue, but it was interesting, and certainly I took a look at it to see where it would go, where it was going. So that's when I kind of made up my mind. Excuse me, that had to do something to put food and stuff on the table, be able to make a better living. So you go to University of Louisville as assistant coach. Tell us a little bit about that move.
Yeah, it was a pretty good connection because I used to go out all the time to the practices and having played there, I gotten close with the coaches out there, and of course, even back when I was at Aaron's, the freshman teams who couldn't play varsity would come down and scrimmage against our team at Aaron's, and we had a good team. Had some big players, and had a good team, a good challenge for Junior and Murphy, Alan Murphy, and those guys used to come down. So as I got closer and closer to those guys, just going out to practice, it seemed like a pretty good fit. And like you said, financially, I mean, we could only do so much making 50. I made $5,200, and I think when I got to Male, it might have gone up to like 56. We got maybe $300 for coaching for the year. So, but financially, that was a big part of it. And then I know Bobby had signed with Oklahoma State, and Steve Smith was out there at Oklahoma State. And he called me. He said, Coach, I signed, but he said, but I don't want to go to Oklahoma State. He said, I want to go to the University of Louisville. So that's when I guess his father and the coaches at the University of Louisville got together. And I don't know what that conversation was like. Bobby changed his mind, of course, and Daryl was out there. So it was really like having a big part of the family together again. So and then the success that we had there. In 1997, we lose to UCLA in Pocatello, Idaho, and that was a good team. And then I think the next year we lost. Well, that year we lost to Marquette. Marquette won the national championship, so we were on a pretty fast track. And then, of course, 2 years later, 1980, we won a national championship and go to 4 Final Fours. 86 won it again. So it's kind of like the family was back together again. But I was, considered one of the top assistant coaches in terms of recruiting. We had a model. We got 6'7", 6'8" athletes that could play 5 positions, interchangeable players. Everybody wanted to know how we were doing it, But we had gotten the model combined with the UCLA model, and then what we did, because we had a hard time beating the Indianas, Notre Dames, Kentucky's, Carolinas on the 7-foot kids. So we get the 6'7", 6'8" athletes, and that's what we did. We were so successful. So I'm thinking at that time, Tim, it's time for me to get a head coaching job because we had all these Final Fours and everything. So for years and for months after that, I mean, the offers never came. So the other guys were getting jobs, and they were getting offers. And so the one thing that we did after several Black assistant coaches had been in the business, we formed a group called the Black Coaches Association. And that association was to try to help other Black assistant coaches get interviews. We knew we couldn't make hire anybody or insisted a search committee hire somebody. But the Black Coaches Association was a group that I'm very proud of because when we first started, there were just very few Blacks in administration and training and coaching. And then when a Black coach was hired, they were like the first one to be fired. So we had John Thompson, we had Nolan Richardson, we had Clem Haskins, and maybe 3 or 4 Black coaches, George Raveling. And they told us when we formed the organization, said, when you form this organization, you're going to be blackballed because they think of you as a rebel group, as a starting trouble. So our response was that, well, if we don't get a job, maybe someone down the road, 5 years, 10 years later, will get a job once they understand that Black assistant coaches can do more than just recruit. And that's what we were used for. We didn't do interviews, we didn't do budgets, we didn't do any of the things. We just go out and recruit. Like they just sent us out on the road. So once we started having seminars talking to Black assistant coaches about how to interview and what you did in those interviews, they started getting interviews and started getting hiring. So there were 5 of us that started that. So I'm just really proud that it grew and expanded from there.
Mm-hmm. So your responsibilities with Denny there at the University of Louisville, did those change as far as learning that other part of the aspects of the coaching period?
Slightly.
Setting budgets and so forth?
Slightly, but I was named the associate head coach. And when I was named the associate head coach, then I started getting more responsibility. Still, I wanted recruiting under me. It's not like we didn't want to recruit, but we wanted to have other expanded responsibilities because I knew that when the parents came in, when the coaches came in, that they wanted to see somebody that looked like them and acted like them. So but we had coaching responsibility in addition to other things that came along with the job.
Yeah, I know the players that came to Louisville during that period, you actually recruited probably 90% of them, if not more. And the relationships as they went on in their lives, either to the pros or to coaching, other jobs, they still maintain a close relationship with you because of that recruiting, connection that you made then. So at some point here, you get the offer to the University of Tennessee back home, when that school that you couldn't go to the games except for this a selected period. How did that happen?
It was a tough decision. It wasn't as easy as some might think it was, because Allen had just signed at the University of Louisville, so he had his national letter. He had just signed, and that was probably my primary concern, just what he was thinking, what he was going through. Uh, so he went, and I didn't know he had done this, but he went like to the players that I recruited, Purvis and the Bradford Smith and all of those guys, and said, my dad's going to be at the University of Tennessee, or he has a chance. What would you do if you were me? That's what he's asking the other players. And what they told him was that if you got a chance to go play for your dad, the support that he's given us and the mentoring he's given us, you'd be crazy not to go play for your dad. So when that happened, we had to go to the NC2A, petition for him to get released from the letter. And I guess that worked out. And the next thing was that I've been talking for so long about Black assistant coaches getting the chance to be a head coach. I said, so now if I turn this job down, it's like I'm preaching one thing and I'm acting a different way. So I decided that, okay, we're gonna take this job. Big, and the family was all torn up. The girls had just started middle school. So everybody came to the same agreement. But then the president at the time of the university was Lamar Alexander, and Lamar Alexander was state senator from Tennessee, and at one time, and my grandmother raised Lamar and his sister in Alcoa. So the families were close. I mean, and my dad used to do work for him. I used to go out and do work for the family. My grandmother raised Lamar, and when he came was, excuse me, with such a strong appeal, I think that was the next thing that made me to jump on the bandwagon with that. So
that was a great move. I know we would bring kids up to participate in some of your programs there, but at University of Tennessee, while you were there, was there anything that just jumped out at you or that you want to share as far as that experience?
Yeah, there were some experiences that I hadn't planned on, some places that I wasn't allowed to go, some things I wasn't allowed to participate in. So from that perspective, yeah, I mean, it was pretty difficult. Anytime there was an incident, it was always used to recruit against me. So that's one thing that I really noticed after after any incident that happened, whether it be a country club or something else like that was involved in the process. So, and my answer was always, I'm here to get my players, to get my staff together, to coach this basketball team, because I couldn't pretend like I was all torn up because of what was happening in 1989. And that really surprised me. And I was concerned in 1989. I said, things are going to be great. We're moving up in time. But then I got concerned about traveling throughout certain areas with the family. But fortunately for us, there were no major incidents. But you were always thinking. You're always thinking about little things like the officials. There were no Black officials when I went into the SEC. So you had to worry about that. How are you going to be treated on the road, and how your family is going to be treated? And they wanted to travel to all the games, So in addition to coaching the team, you had to make sure that you were concerned about all the other outside stuff that was going on. But it was something that I wouldn't change it. Maybe a few things that I'd change if I went there. Teams like I had three of my best players. I had to suspend my third year there. My center, Carlos Groves, and then Doc Rivers, and another guy, Orlando Berry. So we were sort of on the way up, and preseason ranked, and but then after that happened, it was tough. They had never seen things like that. Dale Ellis would come back to the camp, and my guys, Purvis, all those guys would come back. You bring kids up, so all that made a big difference.
Well, it was great to see you step into that position as the first black coach and kind of open the doors for a lot of others to come in and follow behind you. We could talk about stuff for probably the next 2 hours, but I wanted to kind of jump into you move from coaching into business. Of course, your wife and other business partner had already gotten it. You had it going on, I think, during that time. Kind of give us just an overview of the transition from coaching to business.
Yeah, again, it kind of goes back to my long-term philosophy, my long-term thoughts about what I wanted to do. And the more success we had as a basketball team, the more success I had as an assistant coach, never getting any really legitimate feels about becoming a head coach. I said, so if something happens to Coach Crum tomorrow, there's no guarantee I get the head coaching job. Might be able to get an assistant coaching job somewhere, but there's no guarantee. Well, meanwhile, I had met some guys at Ford Motor Company, and I had become very good friends with the guys at Ford Motor Company. One guy in particular, a guy named Oscar Turner, and Oscar was in material handling, purchasing, and called me one day and said, we're looking for minority suppliers, and do you know anybody that we can talk to? And I honestly, I looked around to see who I could find who might want to approach something like this, and I just never could find anybody. But before I could do that, he came to me and said, well, Charlie Johnson is working out here in material handling. He said, you guys are good friends, and he said, won't you guys come in here and talk to us about some things we need? And that's when we came in and they talked about the transportation, delivering parts into Ford, parts out of Ford. And then, of course, Alice was working in financial aid at the university. Very good with the backroom functions, all the pricing and the anything needed on that level. So, it's like I talked about earlier about forming a team. We formed a team with the three of us and started out with our company. Bought 2 trucks from 2 Ford trucks, and then we bought 2 little cargo van trucks, small trucks. Had one of them retrofitted to put rails in it and carry parts in it. And the driver, who we loved as a driver, decided one day he wanted to go home for lunch with our truck, and we just spent this money putting the rails in, and went through under the bypass down by U of L and tore the whole top off that truck. And then, that set us back. So we come together. We said, I don't know, it's too much. I don't know if we can do this. So, and then we couldn't get a license until Ford backed us on getting a license. We couldn't get a license. And Charlie's wife had a nursing home at the time, and we made our office in that nursing home, and they would come and look to see where our license was, where our office was, or bookkeeping was. Well, he would walk around the whole building looking for. He had his notebook in his hand, trying to find this office that we told him we had. Eventually, he just gave up until we could get a legitimate office to put down on Broadway. We had the office, so then from there, we did a good job as a supplier, and there were some companies in Chicago that needed some transportation companies. They had gone out of business. They had a company called Kenosha Auto Transport in Kenosha, Wisconsin. They had 300 trucks parked against the fence. And Ford said, well, we got some guys in Louisville, a minority company that we want to grow. And that's what they did. That's when they came back to us and said, I want you all to meet these guys up in Chicago. And they flew down and we talked and eventually joined that company. And then we became eventually one of the largest minority transportation companies in the U.S., Canada, U.S., and all over. So it was, and the good thing about that, Tim, is that, as you know, and you develop people as store managers and people, and that's what we felt so good about, is that we developed terminal managers. I mean, the trucking business, we've been excluded from that business for a long time, from drivers to terminal managers. And so we got guys that are still now working as ready to retire as terminal managers who we brought on because they weren't being looked upon as in those positions when we first got to the company. So it's been good. It's been really good. And the logistics now that we're doing, we are now logistics, warehousing, distribution. We don't do the trucking anymore. So, but we still got the same customers. We've added customers now like Brown-Forman Distillery, Humana, a lot of smaller companies that we do pick and pack. We do kind of logistics work. So we just added what we were doing before, just without the trucking.
All right. So Wade, you today, you and Alice, your whole family, excuse me, are very involved in not only the business but in the Kentucky community, in giving back and spearheading and helping others be successful. And you, as you mentioned earlier, you and Alice have kind of the same thought process of what you're trying to do with your goals. Tell me how your spiritual life and with your overall look at the legacy that you're looking to leave with this huge family that you have, of grandchildren and great grandchildren. I'm not sure where you are today with that, but give me a little bit overview there to kind of close this out, because I think your legacy and what you and Alice have created in both sides of the basketball and also the business world is really a standard that we can all look up to.
That means a lot, James. It means a lot that we have always had a mission to mentor, to give back, and so much of that is faith-based. And we've always been involved in the church from the time I was growing up. I mean, I've been in Sunday school since I don't know how old I was, and I started with my grandmother and mom and dad, and it just carried over. When Alice and I were married, Alice was steep in her faith and brought me a long way. Because I'm faithful now as in the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who's been so good to us. And even to take it a step further, Alan, of course, is I guess from just watching us, being around us, growing up in the church like we did. I mean, his faith is so strong that he's taught all of us a lot. And pretty much everything he does is faith-based. He has a program that we started out doing Father Knows Best, and bringing fathers in, pairing them with sons and with their children, and now the Fizzle program that he has now, which is a faith-based program. And it all kind of leads back to what can you do for the community. And, you want to make sure that your foundation, our foundation, comes through faith, and we're not just out there doing things just because we say that you want to do them. And we want to make sure that the young people in the community have someone that they don't want to disappoint. And that's kind of the theory that we go by is you put somebody in someone's life that they don't want to disappoint. And also understanding now that you have to reach one kid at a time. You know, it's so much of a challenge now to bring a whole neighborhood into a certain way of thinking. But if you can just reach one kid at a time or one youngster at a time, then of course that can spread and do a lot of good things. But also, we've always tried to raise other minority entrepreneurs. And that was one thing I liked about Ford. I mean, you had to report to them how many dollars do you spend with minority companies. And then when you're showing that, and that means that you got to try to raise some other companies up to a certain level that you're trying to get to. And when minority companies are successful, they do so much in the community, they do so much mentoring. It just changes the whole landscape of people that they deal with. So, not to say that other majority companies don't do that, but we've always felt that if you can raise up a minority company, that they'll have some of the same ideals and goals that we had when we were growing as a company. So, but the faith that we have, I think, is kept us out. We could have done it without the faith. And I've heard Alan say over a period of time, when he was playing, actually, he might have had a good game with the Knicks playing against somebody, and after the game was over, he was the leading scorer. The NBC or whoever comes up to him and said, "Alan, you scored 30 points, and how did you do it? What was your strategy?" And he say, "First, giving glory to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." And I've even seen them, Tim, when they leave, they take the camera and go talk to somebody else, you know. So it's really hard to be a Christian in an unchristian world. So I really respect him, because the people that wanted to interview him wanted to hear somebody talk about some other negative stuff. So, but it's all good, and that's what we always tried to do.
Right. Well, he had two great role models in you and Alice, and even though those TV stations went away, he's still been able to build his network and what he's doing, and kind of a carry on from what you and Alice have instilled in him and your two daughters, you know, and what they do. And now they're, how many grandchildren?
16
grandchildren. So, yeah, and I talked to your grandson here not too long ago. He didn't realize that our connection, but he's starting a great career himself. So,
yeah.
Wade, it's been I really enjoyed talking with you. I'd love to have you back again at some point so we can tell the rest of the great story of the Houston family. And you know, it's been my pleasure throughout life to be connected with you as a brother, as a big brother, as you as my big brother, and the good times. I didn't have time to talk about Chinese writing and you know, all the little tricks that we pulled and manipulated. And when we would go to parties, people would hate to see us coming, you know.
Alice and I pull a lot of those tricks on our grandkids. So it's so much fun to do that.
Yeah.
But Sam, I want to say, I know you're moving on, but I just want to say how much of a blessing it's been for you and the family to be in our lives. And I think it's I won't say it's unusual, but you just don't find families that have stayed as close as we've stayed. Your success is so good. Saritha's success and the family has been a story in itself. But I'm just glad that we still stay in touch and wish you continued success along with your business and all the things that you do to help people and bring people along.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
This has been Catch as Catch Can. Your success story is waiting to be written. What will you catch today? Go to tinsley.speaks.com for exclusive content, resources, and opportunities. Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr. is a production of Advantage Media.